name is Pam Batchelor, and this is Getting Started with Schoolnet for the 2020-2021 school year. I'm part of the home-based team at North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and I'm proud to serve as the Schoolnet product manager for the state. I'm excited to get started with Schoolnet for the new year and to show you some of the operational features of how you can use Schoolnet to improve your instructional improvement. So if you'd like to join us on our presentation for today, please go to the bit.ly/NCB2 Schoolnet. So this video is the first of 3 videos in a Getting Started webinar series for 2020-2021. These pre-recorded videos are meant to be short, under 30 minutes each, to help you get started with using Schoolnet on your own time in a flexible environment. Today's video, we're going to be talking about what is Schoolnet and the different module components within Schoolnet, our instructional improvement system for the state. Our second video will be talking about the Schoolnet test experience, how to create a test, how to make sure that you check a student's personal needs profile to ensure that they receive test accommodations. And then our third video will be jumping ahead to looking at what happens after a student has taken a test in Schoolnet and looking at the pre-formatted reports that Schoolnet provides so you can adjust your instruction accordingly. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few resources about where you can get help. So first of all, every public school unit has a Schoolnet admin. This person is your first point of contact within your public school unit. If you have questions about Schoolnet, or maybe if you're reporting an issue, something isn't working well, your Schoolnet admin is that first person to receive those issues. We also have a Schoolnet Google site, which has a lot of helpful videos as well as documents to help you learn how to use Schoolnet. And then we have a YouTube playlist. The YouTube playlist has the last 2 years of webinars available on it, so you can go back and look at more full-length, hour-long webinars to really learn more about Schoolnet and take a deeper dive into it. One note, we do offer monthly webinars, and these webinars will start in the fall in September. You are worth 0.1 CEU for digital learning competency credit, so you are welcome to click on the links. We offer our webinars at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m., so hopefully one of those options will be good for your schedule and you can join us. We do have a new webinar platform for 2020-2021. So with the new webinar platform, you may be asked to enter an event password. And so the event password for all of our Schoolnet webinars this year will be Schoolnet 2020. So when you click on those blue registration links, if you are asked for that event password, just type that in. We are adjusting to our new webinar platform, so things may look a little different than if you've taken a webinar in the past, but we still have the same interactive format and goals to help you maximize your use of Schoolnet in your classroom. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to jump into the platform. So to get to Schoolnet, we go from the NC Ed Cloud, just like we access our other home-based applications such as PowerSchool and Nieces, and we're going to click on that red house icon. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and jump on over into the platform. Right, so I'm now on the home page of the platform. My home page looks a little different than yours because I'm not a teacher, so I don't have classes immediately available, and I may have a few more options than you do, but I wanted to just go ahead and show you the navigation and the lay of the land. So on your home page, there's a lot of information. You'll have your classes here in this My Classroom box. If you're viewing this video before the first day of classes for your public school unit, you may notice that your homepage looks a little bit like mine and it's kind of blank. Rest assured that the first day of class, PowerSchool syncs with Schoolnet every night, and all of your data will populate. So all your students, your classes, your students' historical data, all that information will come into Schoolnet overnight. So if it looks a little blank right now, don't worry. Whenever that first day of classes is for your public school unit, all that information will come in to Schoolnet, and it'll be really nice. So I do want to point out this classroom assessment monitor piece that's on your homepage. Again, right now in summer, there's not a lot to look at right here, but once you have that first day of classes, this classroom assessment monitor becomes a really feature-rich part of your homepage where you can view any district assessments. If your school uses Schoolnet for district benchmarks, you'll see that information there. Classroom tests, of course, those are things that you're creating and scheduling, and you'll be able to see summary information about your students at a glance, kind of how they did and performed on these tests. And then we also have standardized test data in Schoolnet. So things like we didn't take our EOCs and EOGs in the spring, but any previous year's tests will be there, as well as, we have historical M-class data in Schoolnet, so you'll be able to see that. ACT data, if they took the ACT, all those different standardized test points come into Schoolnet. And then the last tab is the upcoming tests. So this is where you'll see any tests that you've scheduled or created, right? So over here on the left side of the page is our navigation for Schoolnet. And if you are brand new to Schoolnet, there's two options for viewing your navigation. There's either the three dots, which just has the icons present, or the three lines. I like to keep mine out on the three lines so that way I see the names of the different modules within Schoolnet, but it's certainly a display preference and up to you. So I'm just going to take a moment to kind of go through what each of these modules are to kind of let you know what is available inside Schoolnet. So we do have a KPI dashboard, and a KPI dashboard provides metrics about your public school unit, such as how many students are enrolled, what their percentages were on, we won't have last year's EOGs, but the previous year. You'll see like a summary table of, by subject area and grade level, what your EOG scores were, or EOCs if you're a high school. And the level of data that you see on the KPI dashboard changes with your level in Schoolnet. So a school administrator is going to be able to see more data than a classroom teacher. So just keep in mind that a lot of things in Schoolnet are role-based. So what you're seeing is going to be limited to your students. And, of course, that changes with your role. If you're in a leadership role where your students are the entire school or even the entire district, you'll be able to see more data. The next piece I want to talk about is the reporting dashboard. So the reporting dashboard is where all of our data lives in Schoolnet, and it also is where all of our prior year's data is. So the nice thing about Schoolnet is that it refreshes itself every summer to prepare for the new year. But that doesn't mean that you can't go back and drill down into previous years. And how you do that is on this reporting dashboard. You go over here to where it says results reflect, and instead of enrollment at the time of assessment, which basically means today, if you click on it, you can also see your past school year's data, right? So we've had Schoolnet in the state of North Carolina all the way going back to that 2012-2013 year when some districts piloted it. So there's a lot of data in Schoolnet, and you can go back and look at those test scores, look at student data, look at the student profiles from all of your previous students. So just keep that in mind, that when you look at things this year, you may be like, oh, where did all my data go from last year? And it's still right here in your reporting dashboard. You just have to change the year right here on this drop-down menu in order to see your prior year data. All right. The next module is classrooms. And we're going to spend a lot of time on the reporting dashboard in our third video. So we're just kind of giving an overview. So under the classrooms module, you can see there's two functions. There's student groups and a lesson planner. So student groups are pretty self-explanatory. You can create your own groups in Schoolnet and add students to them. Now obviously right now, since we're in summer and we don't have students loaded yet for that first day of class, we can't add any students to groups, but you can certainly go ahead and create your groups, right? So you can create a group for targeted instruction or remediation, or you can even, I've seen teachers create groups by domain. So that way, you know, as they notice student performance, they can add them to that domain group to get extra help or maybe to get some acceleration. So you can go ahead and do that right now. Just, you know, click on that blue create a new group and give it a name and tell it what type of category it is, and it will show up on this page and be ready for the new year. Lesson planner. Schoolnet does have a lesson planner built into it. So I know a lot of teachers and schools may have a subscription or something that they use for lesson planning, but I wanted to let you know that Schoolnet does have this feature. The nice thing is that your administrators can go in and look at your lesson planner in Schoolnet. There's also a role to allow instructional coaches or school library media folks to view lesson planners. So that's another thing. If you are listening to this and you are one of those roles and you can't see lesson planners, ask your data manager at your school if they can add that lesson planner feature to your Schoolnet roles and permissions. So lesson planner, when up here at the top where it says select calendars, once we have that sync with Schoolnet in the first day of classes, you will have a calendar for each one of your courses where you can add things, assign. You use the little buttons over here on the left, right? You can also create PDFs of anything that you've saved up here. So that's kind of nice. If I go through and I select some instructional materials to add to my lesson planner, and then maybe I'm out, I can click on that PDF button and it's going to make a PDF of my lessons for that particular day that I choose. So that's a nice feature there. So I wanted to let you know there is a lesson planner in Schoolnet if you choose to use it. All right, so the next module we're going to spend a little bit of time on is the instructional materials. So a lot of times people think of Schoolnet and they think of it just as a test bank, you know, where you can go and find items and create tests. And yes, that's definitely true, but we also have instructional materials, thousands of them. So lesson plans, resources. So if I just go in here and I can go ahead and type in fractions. All right, and so I see two tabs. So the first tab is North Carolina Materials. These are resources within Schoolnet, but we also have a second tab. This tab here is Go Open and See, which is our North Carolina Open Education Resources repository. So that integration is built in within Schoolnet that you can actually go and search materials that are on Go Open and See. And because we have single sign-on in the state of North Carolina, you can actually click on a resource. They'll tell you a little bit about the resource, and to actually view it, you click and it will bring you up into Go Open and See. So we can see that this is a CK12 lesson about dividing fractions by fractions, right? So very nice feature to be able to integrate with Go Open and See. Notice that I see the standards that are aligned. If I wanted to add this to that lesson planner that I just talked about, I can click on the schedule button and I'll go ahead and add it for today. And I'm going to close. And then there's also some other buttons. So this save button saves the lesson to my favorites. So that way I can go, when I go under instructional materials and I see my materials, those are the materials that I've saved. That's where they go. And then there's also this feature to build an express test. So this lesson plan here was an open lesson plan from CK12. Maybe I want to design a quick assessment to go along with it. I can use this build express test, and it's going to pull in the standards that are aligned to this particular lesson. So this one is aligned to NC5 and F4. So if I click on build express test, it would actually start the express test process and show me how many items in Schoolnet are aligned to NC5 and F4 and build a test from there. So that's a very nice feature as well in Schoolnet. So I'm going to go back to that previous page because I know you're not all fractions or math teachers that are watching this video. So I just want to show you a couple other ways you can search for resources. So I'm going to take that back out, and I'm just going to do a blank search so you can see all the resources. So you can see we have 45,000 in Schoolnet and 38,000 in Go Open and See. So let's just say I want to look for resources. So there's these different material types. So, obviously a curricular unit, instructional unit, those are going to be our bigger, longer range pieces. But we also just have lesson plans, assessments, and maybe I'm just looking at a resource. A resource would be maybe an activity that my students could do within a lesson, whether I'm looking at something for, introducing a new topic or reviewing or, maybe a resource to help me accelerate with a small group of students who already have demonstrated mastery on standard. So I can go through these resources, and now I can maybe select a subject area, and you can see those counts as well. So notice that we do have materials for every area, right? Not just our core areas, but we do have career and technical, we have ESL items, guidance items, exceptional children, a small number. So maybe I'm going to go in here and look at PE. Okay, so now I have just PE. We have pacing guides, other things. So maybe I'm going to go in, and maybe I'm a middle school health and PE teacher. So here's an activity about using an agility ladder. Again, I have that ability to save it and add it to my favorites. I can see what standards it's aligned to, and then I can go actually look at what the resource is. So some different drills. All right, so just wanted to point out all the different instructional materials that we have available in Schoolnet and how you can search for them. So there's one more thing I wanted to show you before we leave instructional materials, and that is that there's a very specific subject area that I want to mention, and that is, let me go back out here. The home-based training. So there's 120 resources for home-based training. So I'm going to click on that and just show you what these are. So home-based training is actually all about Schoolnet. So how you can use Schoolnet within your classroom, or if you're even a district administrator, there's resources on here for you as well. So feel free to go through and browse. And the one thing you'll notice is the first one is the training site logins. So we do have a training site for Schoolnet. So if you're ever kind of just, want to go in and play around, you can definitely do that without having to worry about, creating a test or scheduling something for the wrong class or something like that. We do have a training site, as well as if you're using, you want to show maybe your administrators or another group of teachers about it, and you don't want to show your own data, you can use the training site to model anything that's in Schoolnet. All right, So we're going to talk about instructional materials. Instructional materials admin is a module that you probably won't see. That's only for people that have certain rights in Schoolnet to improve instructional materials. So if you are maybe a district level instructional coach and you're working on putting some lesson plans and materials in Schoolnet, then you would have this module. The next thing we're going to talk about is the assessments, and I think that's where everyone tends to go to first within Schoolnet. So the first thing is this assessment dashboard. It looks kind of like a speedometer. And this is where you can find all the tests that you've created, right? So we can look at tests that you have currently, tests that are upcoming and scheduled. A lot of questions we get at the beginning of the year is, how do I go and find my tests from last year? So the easiest way is to go under tests and find. And then you're going to make sure you change this admin date range to the year that you created the test, right? So Schoolnet makes it so it kind of cleans up all of our tests from past years and organizes them by year for us, but we can still go in and access them at any point in time. So maybe you made a test last year that you want to give this year. You can definitely go in here by clicking on the date range. And then the key thing is that when you're looking at tests that you created last year, you're going to want to make sure you make a copy of them for this year. Don't just go into that test and change the scheduled dates to this year. That'll actually cause a lot of data problems with your reporting. So the best thing is to always make a fresh copy of a test for a new year and assign it to your new students, because just changing the date range will actually, you will still be assigning that test to last year's students. So always make a copy. Just when in doubt, make a copy of a test. So the next part is the items, rubrics, and passages. We're going to spend a few minutes looking at how to find items. So I'm going to click on that find, and the first thing I'm going to do is find items, and then I'll show you how to find passages for my ELA friends that are watching this. So when we look, the first thing is we have all of these filters on the left side. So you notice there's 187,000 items. I don't know about you, but I don't have time to look at 187,000 items. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the item banks that are in Schoolnet. So Schoolnet has a variety of item banks that you can see. So you have your personal bank, which is items that maybe you've created on your own. But then we have item banks that everyone sees, right? So we have a Certica bank. All of these items have been aligned to North Carolina Standard Course of Study. We have a Certica bank with English items, and then we have a Certica bank with Spanish items. We took your feedback, and we heard that the Spanish items are great, but we need them all in one place. So by checking different boxes here, I'm choosing to search different item banks. So a couple other banks we have for CTE. CTE teachers have two banks, one for middle school and one for unsecured, which is for our high school items. So if I was a CTE teacher, I would only choose these two CTE banks to look for items, because those are the items that are provided by the state that I'm supposed to be using. The NCDPI _benchmark bank, teachers do not see this bank. So this is a bank that you'll only see if you are a leadership level or at the district level, because this is a protected bank for if you're building benchmarks for yours at a school level or at a district level. The next two banks are our Classroom Bank and Released Bank, right? So Classroom Bank has classroom level items that are similar in nature to the EOCs and EOGs. These are released by NCDPI and created by teachers with North Carolina certifications. They're free for you to use in your classroom assessments. And then the Released Bank contains the released forms. Just a note that due to copyright restrictions, we were not able to put the new ELA released forms that came out this spring in Schoolnet. We're still working on hopefully getting release for that, but as of right now, the new 3.8 and English 2 reading items are not in Schoolnet for released. You can still go, and I believe they're available on the NC Test website if you want to look at the released forms for the new ELA, but due to copyright right now, we're unable to put them in Schoolnet. All right, so for this search, I'm just going to look at the Certica bank. So I'm going to select my banks there, and now I'm looking at 64,000 items. So, you know, a popular thing to do here is to next put in our subject level and our grade level, but you really don't have to. You don't have to put those in, because if you go in and select standards, your standard has your subject area and your grade level in it. So I'm going to go down to science, and maybe I'm going to go look at 5th grade science, right? And so it pulls up our standards, and looking at domains, maybe I'm going to look at matter, and I use the arrows to drill down from the domains into the specific substandards. All right, so maybe I'm working on this one here, and CES 5P21, and I click on Save and Close. And now, instead of looking at 180,000 items, I'm looking at 76. All right, but maybe that's still not quite clear enough. So the Certica items are nice because they have a web's depth of knowledge as well as a Bloom's domain. So if I go over here on the left side of my filters, I can actually go and choose which web's level I'm looking at. So maybe I want 2 and 3. All right, so that's 55 items. And so now I can click on an item and use the little, you notice it puts it in my shopping cart. And then under item actions, I click on add to test. All right, so we're going to go further in detail with this in our next video when we look at the test experience and building it. But I'm going to go ahead and quickly X out of this, and then we're going to go in back under items, rubrics, and passages, and I'm going to show passages. So passages are a very similar search method. The only thing that's going to be different is I'm just going to go right in and select standards, right? So maybe I'm going to look for ELA, and maybe I'll do 7th grade. And then under my standards, maybe we're going to do informational text. So I'll do RI1. And RI2. So looking at citing pieces, and then central ideas. Save and close. All right. And so now it's going to show me passages, and it's going to sort them with passages that have the most items matching the standards I selected, right? So I can go and look at windshield wipers. I'm not sure that's going to be interesting to my students. So different eggs, different colors. Okay, this one looks better. All right, so I'm going to go and I can look at the different items. And again, I use that same kind of checkbox next to it. So that's our 7.1, 7.1, 7.1. All right, let me go down until I see some 7 point here, 7.2. 7.2. All right, so now I have a few items selected from each one of the standards for that passage. And so then I do the same thing where I go under item actions and click add to test. So we're going to dive deeper into this into the next video, but this was just a quick search on how to go in and find items. The last thing I'm going to talk about right now under the assessment module in Schoolnet is going to look at co-authoring. So co-authoring is how I can share tests with other teachers across the state. It's not even just within your school or district. You can actually collaborate with teachers across the state. It's a statewide database. So I encourage you, if you know that you're going to be sharing tests with your PLC, or maybe with a friend who teaches the same thing in a different PSU, you go ahead and click on Create New and Folder. And maybe this is going to be my 7th grade social studies folder. And then when we go to add users, we're going to search by last name, comma, first name, right? So I'm going to let that search for a minute. It does take a minute to look for users because it is finding folks across the state, right? So when we look, and if someone has a common last name, you know, like Smith or Stanley in this case, you're going to want to make sure you choose the right one. So the one I want is in Johnston County, and we're going to add her, and then you can go and add more folks too. There's no limit to how many people you can have in a folder, but just going ahead and creating that folder will now make it so any tests that you put in that folder, let me refresh my page. There we go. Any tests that I put in that folder now where it says create new test, Amy already has rights to it within Coauthoring to be able to see the test, help me build the test, and then when it comes time to actually copying the test, we can both make copies of it and assign it to our students. All right, so that's another important part about co-authoring, is that once you have the test where you want it to be and ready to give it to students, everyone needs to make a copy of it and assign it to your own students. So these co-authoring folders are kind of like your black line masters, and I know I'm dating myself when I say that, because that was what you did when I was teaching, right? You had your black line masters that you went and you made copies of. So anyhow, this has been a quick overview of everything there is in Schoolnet. I hope you come back and look for our next video when we dive into the test creation process and how to create a test and how to also make sure your students have accommodations. Thank you.